It was supposed to be a routine security morning at Terminal 4 until something impossible happened. Passengers stopped mid-stride as 14 uniformed police officers suddenly broke formation, surrounding a single man standing alone near the departure gates. No one dared to breathe. The man wasn't running. He wasn't resisting. He simply stood there, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a half-buttoned black suit jacket with no shirt underneath, revealing a chest covered in dark tattoos, staring back at the cops like he'd been expecting them all along. "Don't move!" an officer barked, his hand instinctively moving toward his holster. But the man didn't flinch. His expression remained calm, almost bored, as his eyes slowly scanned the line of officers facing him. Then he spoke. 5 words that made every cop in that formation freeze. "One of you isn't real." The terminal went silent. Travelers clutched their bags tighter. Mothers pulled children close. Phones rose instantly, recording what everyone assumed would be a violent confrontation. But was this really an arrest? A trap? Or was the most feared Mafia boss on the East Coast trying to warn them about something they couldn't see yet? Something deadly hidden in plain sight among the very officers sworn to stop him? What happened next shocked not just the airport, but the entire world, and turned this tense standoff into a desperate race against time to stop a catastrophe no one saw coming. Before we dive in, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. These stories reach people everywhere, and I love seeing how far the truth travels. Morning sunlight poured through Terminal 4's towering glass walls, bathing the concourse in golden light. The rhythmic hum of rolling suitcases, distant gate announcements, and the soft chatter of travelers created the peaceful soundtrack of routine. Just another busy morning. Flight attendants smiled politely at boarding passengers. Families rushed toward check-in counters clutching tickets and passports. Business travelers queued at coffee kiosks, scrolling through phones, completely unaware that within the next hour, this ordinary terminal would become ground zero for something the world would never forget. Captain Sarah Chen adjusted her radio as she led her tactical response unit through the main concourse. 14 officers moved in disciplined formation beside her, trained, focused, and ready. They weren't patrolling, they were waiting. Sarah prided herself on precision. Her team had handled hostage negotiations, bomb threats, and high-risk arrests without a single civilian casualty. They were the best-trained rapid response unit in the state. Each officer had been hand-picked for their ability to stay calm under pressure and make split-second decisions that saved lives. But together, they formed something more, an unbreakable wall of law and order in a world that constantly tested both. As Sarah walked, Officer Martinez, her second in command, moved slightly ahead, his sharp eyes scanning faces and luggage with practiced vigilance. Passengers occasionally glanced their way, some reassured by the show of security, others nervously wondering why so many cops were gathered in one place. Sarah allowed the attention. She knew visible authority deterred threats before they materialized. In an era of uncertainty, her team represented safety. At the same time, her radio crackled softly. Unit 12, maintain position at departure gates. Target approaching Terminal 4 within 5 minutes. Sarah acknowledged with a calm, steady voice. She'd done this dozens of times, high-profile arrests, coordinated takedowns, but something about today felt different. The intel had been unusually specific, almost too specific. The target wasn't trying to hide. He'd practically announced his arrival. Martinez glanced back at her, his jaw tense. "Cap, you sure about this? Walking into our trap voluntarily?" "That's what bothers me," Sarah murmured, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the crowd ahead. Then she saw him. A tall figure emerged from the security checkpoint, moving through streams of travelers with the kind of confidence that made people instinctively step aside. He wore a tailored black suit jacket, half open, revealing intricate tattoos sprawled across his chest, symbols of a life built on violence and power. Jack Alison. The name alone carried weight. The East Coast's most feared Mafia boss. The man federal agents had been hunting for 3 years, and now he was walking straight toward them like he owned the airport. Sarah's hand moved to her radio. All units, target confirmed. Gate 12, move into position. Within seconds, her team responded with military precision. 14 officers formed 2 perfect lines, creating a human corridor that blocked every escape route. Their posture was controlled, professional, but every hand rested near a holster. Travelers froze. Conversations died mid-sentence. A child's laughter cut off abruptly. Jack stopped walking. He stood perfectly still in the center of the formation, hands relaxed at his sides, his expression unreadable. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't surprised. He looked like a man who'd planned this exact moment. Sarah stepped forward, her voice firm and clear. Jack Alison, you're under arrest for— You're not here to arrest me. Jack interrupted calmly, his eyes locking onto hers. You're here because I called you. The words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Sarah's jaw tightened. What are you talking about? Jack's gaze shifted, slowly scanning the line of officers surrounding him. His eyes moved methodically, assessing each face, each uniform, each badge. Then he stopped. His focus locked onto one officer standing 3 positions to the right. Because, Jack said quietly, his voice carrying across the silent terminal. One of you doesn't belong here. The officers stiffened. Confusion rippled through the line. Sarah's heart began to pound, not from fear, but from the realization that something was catastrophically wrong. Jack took one step forward. And he's wearing something, Jack continued, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper. That's going to kill everyone in this terminal. And he's wearing something that's going to kill everyone in this terminal. The words cut through the air like a blade. Captain Sarah Chen's hand tightened on her radio. Every instinct screamed at her to dismiss Jack's claim as manipulation, a desperate ploy from a cornered criminal. But something in his eyes told a different story. This wasn't fear. It wasn't panic. It was certainty. You're lying, Martinez snapped, his voice sharp with anger. This is a game. You're trying to distract us. Jack didn't move, didn't blink. His gaze remained locked on the officer 3 positions to the right, a younger man with a regulation haircut and a badge that gleamed under the terminal lights. I wish I was, Jack said quietly. Sarah's mind raced. Jack Alison wasn't just any criminal. He was a ghost who'd evaded federal task forces for years, a strategist who'd built an empire on calculated brutality and impossible escapes. The FBI had 3 separate case files on him. The DEA had 2 more. Interpol had flagged him for crimes spanning 4 countries. He controlled dock unions, shipping routes, and half the underground economy along the eastern seaboard. His enemies didn't retire. They disappeared. Witnesses changed their stories or vanished entirely. Even other crime families feared crossing him. Jack Alison didn't make mistakes. He made bodies, but he'd also never walked into a police trap voluntarily. Until today. Why should we believe anything you say? Sarah demanded, stepping closer. You've spent a decade destroying lives, corrupting officials, running guns and drugs through our city, and now you expect us to trust you? No, Jack replied, his voice steady. I expect you to check your own team before it's too late. The officers shifted uncomfortably. A few exchanged glances. This wasn't protocol. This wasn't how arrests worked. Cap, He's stalling, Martinez insisted. We need to cuff him and get him out of here before... Before what? Jack interrupted, his eyes still fixed on the silent officer. Before you realize I called you 3 hours ago? Before you figure out why I told dispatch exactly where I'd be and when I'd arrive? Sarah's blood went cold. What are you talking about? Check your logs, Jack said. Anonymous tip came in at 6:47 this morning. Male caller reported a credible threat at Terminal 4. Gave a detailed description of the suspect. He paused, a bitter smile crossing his face. Me. Martinez pulled out his phone, fingers moving rapidly across the screen. His expression shifted from anger to confusion. Cap, there is a call logged. Anonymous. Timestamp matches. That's impossible, another officer muttered. Why would you turn yourself in? Sarah asked, her tactical mind trying to piece together a puzzle that made no sense. I didn't turn myself in, Jack corrected her. I brought you here. There's a difference. He finally moved, one slow step to his left, adjusting his angle to face the entire formation. His eyes swept across the line of officers with the precision of a man who'd spent his life reading people, identifying weaknesses, calculating odds. Then he stopped. Focused. Pointed. Him. Every head turned toward Officer David Cole, a 28-year-old who'd been with the unit for 8 months. Clean record, solid performance reviews, no red flags. Cole's face remained neutral, but Sarah noticed the slight tension in his jaw. This is insane, Cole said, his voice calm but strained. I don't know what he's trying to pull, but... Your badge number is ARP 2847, Jack interrupted, his voice clinical, detached. But the font on the last digit is wrong. It's 0.2 millimeters thicker than regulation. Your boots are Blackhawk Tactical, standard issue. But the stitching pattern on the left heel is reversed, manufacturer's defect that was recalled 2 years ago. Your radio is clipped on the right side. Every other officer here wears it on the left. And your holster? Jack tilted his head slightly. Sits 1 inch lower than it should, because you're not used to wearing it. The terminals seemed to shrink around them. Travelers had backed away, sensing the shift from arrest to something far more dangerous. Security personnel hovered at the edges, unsure whether to intervene. Cole's expression didn't change, but his breathing quickened, barely noticeable, but enough. Sarah's mind churned through possibilities. Undercover officer? Federal plant? Or something worse? Check his credentials, Jack said softly. Really check them. Not just the badge, the man wearing it. Martinez moved toward Cole, hand extended. Cole, let me see your... Don't. Jack's voice sharpened, cutting through the moment like a warning shot. Don't touch him. Don't get close. Don't do anything until you understand what he's carrying. Cole's hand drifted almost imperceptibly toward his chest, then stopped. And in that microsecond of movement, Sarah saw it. The fear, the recognition, the truth. What is he carrying? She asked, her voice dropping to a deadly whisper. Jack's eyes met hers, and for the first time since he'd walked into the terminal, she saw something that terrified her more than any weapon. Regret. Something none of your scanners can detect, Jack whispered. His words meant only for her but carrying across the silent corridor of officers and frozen travelers. Something designed to turn this airport into a tomb. The world seemed to stop breathing, and in that terrible silence, Officer David Cole, or whoever he really was, finally smiled. The smile lasted only a heartbeat, but it was enough. Evacuate the terminal, Sarah's voice cracked like a whip across the concourse. Now! Chaos erupted instantly. Security personnel scrambled into action, herding confused passengers toward emergency exits. Mothers grabbed children. Business travelers abandoned luggage. The peaceful morning dissolved into a stampede of panic as alarms began their piercing wail. But Sarah's focus never left Cole. Neither did Jack's. The 14 officers instinctively tightened their formation, creating a cage of bodies around both men. Hands hovered over weapons. Radios crackled with urgent commands. The air itself felt electric, charged with the promise of violence. Talk, Sarah commanded Jack, her voice low and deadly. Right now, what are we dealing with? Jack's jaw tightened. For a man who'd built an empire on secrets, speaking truth to police clearly didn't come easy. The Serpents, he said finally. Rival organization out of Newark. They've been trying to move into my territory for 2 years. 3 weeks ago, they executed coordinated hits in Philadelphia, Boston, and Baltimore. Wiped out entire crews. Clean, professional, military-level precision. What does that have to do with... They're not just taking territory, Jack interrupted. They're erasing it. Scorched earth. And they're framing me for terrorism to trigger a federal crackdown that wipes out every family on the eastern seaboard. Martinez shook his head in disbelief. You expect us to believe this is some kind of mob war? I expect you to believe that device he's wearing will kill everyone within a 100-meter radius, Jack snapped, his composure finally cracking. It's a nitrogen-based compound suspended in a polymer matrix, passes through every scanner you have because it reads as organic material. No metal, no wires, no signature. The officers exchanged horrified glances. Sarah felt ice spread through her chest. Military grade, Jack continued, his voice dropping. The kind of thing that shouldn't exist outside Black Ops programs. But the Serpents have connections that make mine look like street-level thugs. This is insane, an officer whispered. Check yourselves, Jack said urgently. All of you. Look at each other's gear. Really look, because if I can spot the differences, so can you. The formation shifted as officers began scrutinizing their teammates with new eyes, comparing badges, uniforms, equipment. Fear replaced discipline. Trust evaporated like smoke. And in that moment of distraction, Cole moved. Just half a step backward. Subtle, almost imperceptible. But Jack saw it. Don't. Jack's voice cut through the chaos. Don't even think about running. Cole froze, his mask of calm finally cracking. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool air conditioning. His breathing quickened. You want to know how I knew? Jack asked. His tone almost conversational now, like a professor explaining a theorem. It wasn't just the uniform. It was the way you stand. Real cops distribute weight on their heels. Defensive training. You're on the balls of your feet. Offensive stance. Striker's posture. Cole's eyes darted toward the nearest exit. And your hands, Jack continued, taking one deliberate step forward. They're too soft. No calluses from weapon training, no scarring from cuff friction, but you've got rope burns on your wrists, hidden under your sleeves, and chemical stains on your right index finger. Explosive residue. Jack, stop, Sarah warned, sensing the moment spiraling. But Jack wasn't finished. And that watch you're wearing? Tag Heuer Aqua Racer. $12,000 retail. How does a cop 8 months on the job afford that? Unless... He paused, his eyes hardening. Unless someone paid you very, very well to die today. Cole's face went white. His hand twitched toward his belt. Just a fraction of movement, but it was enough. Gun! Martinez shouted. 3 officers drew their weapons simultaneously, barrels snapping toward Cole with trained precision. "Hands up! Don't move! Get down now!" Time seemed to fragment into slow motion. Cole's hand continued its trajectory toward his belt, his expression shifting from panic to something darker. Resignation. Determination. The kind of look worn by men who'd already accepted death. Sarah's finger moved to her trigger, muscle memory overriding thought. But Jack Alison moved faster. He launched forward with explosive speed, closing the 3-meter gap between them in a heartbeat. His shoulder drove into Cole's chest with the force of a battering ram, carrying both men sideways in a violent tackle. "Don't shoot!" Sarah screamed, but her voice was drowned out by the impact. The 2 bodies crashed into a luggage cart, sending bags flying. Metal shrieked against tile. Cole's hand was still reaching, fingers stretched towards something hidden beneath his uniform shirt. Jack's fist connected with Cole's jaw. Once, twice. Brutal strikes meant to disable, not kill. But Cole's fingers found what they were searching for. A small tab. Red. Attached to a wire running beneath his vest. His eyes met Jack's, and in that split second, both men understood the terrible truth. The device was on a dead man's switch, and Cole's finger was already pulling. Jack's hand clamped down on Cole's wrist with crushing force, stopping the pull inches from completion. "Hold him!" Sarah screamed. Martinez and 2 other officers dove into the struggle, pinning Cole's arms and legs against the cold terminal floor. The impostor thrashed violently, his face contorted with rage and desperation, but 4 sets of hands rendered him immobile. Throughout the terminal, emergency protocols activated with mechanical precision. Steel security shutters slammed down over storefronts with thunderous crashes. Red strobing lights transformed the sunlit concourse into something from a nightmare. The piercing alarm continued its relentless wail. "Lockdown! Lockdown! All personnel report to stations." Armed response teams flooded in from secure corridors, assault rifles raised, faces hidden behind tactical helmets. The last fleeing passengers were swept toward emergency exits by security personnel. Within 90 seconds, Terminal 4 transformed from a peaceful gateway into a fortified war zone. Sarah knelt beside the struggling mass of bodies, her weapon trained on Cole's head. "Get that vest off him, carefully." 2 officers worked with trembling hands, unbuttoning Cole's uniform shirt to reveal the tactical vest beneath. But this wasn't standard issue. Woven into the lining, barely visible against the dark fabric, were thin strips of clay-like material in a crosshatch pattern. "Jesus Christ," Martinez breathed. "Nobody move," a new voice commanded. Lieutenant Frank Morrison, head of the bomb disposal unit, approached with measured steps, his face grim behind protective glasses. He carried a handheld scanner that clicked and whirred as he swept it over Cole's body. The silence stretched. Every officer held their breath. Morrison's jaw tightened. "It's active. Compound reads as organic tissue to standard scanners, exactly like he said." His eyes flicked toward Jack with something between respect and horror. "There's approximately 800 grams here. In this configuration, kill radius is 40 meters. Injury radius extends to 100. "Can you disarm it?" Sarah asked. Morrison shook his head slowly. "Not here. The trigger mechanism is integrated into his nervous system, probably a pressure sensor tied to his heartbeat. If we try to remove it and his pulse stops or spikes, it detonates. We'd need a surgical team, controlled environment, and about 6 hours we don't have." "Then what do we do?" an officer demanded, his voice cracking. Jack pushed himself to his feet, wiping blood from his split knuckle. "You let me explain what you're really dealing with." Sarah's weapon didn't waver, but her expression shifted, calculation replacing pure hostility. "Talk." The serpents didn't just plant one bomb, Jack said, his voice carrying across the now silent terminal. They planted a narrative. Think about it. Notorious mafia boss shows up at a busy airport. Device detonates, hundreds dead. And every news outlet in America broadcasts the same story. Domestic terrorism by organized crime. Understanding dawned across Sarah's face. They're forcing a federal response. RICO indictments across every family from here to Miami, Jack confirmed. FBI raids, asset seizures, a crackdown so massive it destabilizes the entire eastern seaboard criminal infrastructure. And while law enforcement is busy destroying what's left of the old families, he paused. The serpents move into the vacuum unopposed. Why tell us? Martinez challenged. You could have run, disappeared like you always do. Jack's expression darkened with memory. 4 days ago, the warehouse on the Baltimore docks had been silent when Jack arrived. Too silent. His lieutenant, Marcus, had called requesting an urgent meeting. But Marcus's voice had carried a tremor Jack recognized. Fear. Jack found him in the back office, throat slit, still warm. And on the desk, a tablet playing looped security footage. The video showed 2 men in tactical gear planting something inside a police uniform. They worked with clinical precision, discussing arrival times, security rotations, and airport terminal layouts. One of them turned toward the camera, his face partially visible. Jack had recognized the tattoo on his neck immediately. The serpent's mark. But it was the final seconds of footage that made his blood run cold. A schematic of Terminal 4 with multiple red X marks, and a date. Today. Marcus had died trying to warn him, and the serpents had made it look like Jack ordered the hit. They killed my people, Jack said quietly, returning to the present. Framed me for their deaths, and planned to massacre hundreds of innocents with my face as the poster for terrorism. His eyes hardened. I don't run from fights. I end them. The officers exchanged glances. The equation was shifting. Enemy of my enemy. The oldest calculation in warfare. Sarah lowered her weapon slightly. So you walked into our trap. I made you part of my trap, Jack corrected. The serpents expected me to run or fight. They didn't expect me to bring 14 cops as witnesses to prove I'm not responsible for what happens next. Which is? Morrison asked. Whatever they've really got planned, Jack replied. Because if I know the serpents, one bomb is never enough. Cole, still pinned to the ground, suddenly laughed. A wet, broken sound that made everyone turn. You think you're so smart, he wheezed through bloodied lips. You think you stopped something. His body went rigid, eyes wide, tendons standing out on his neck. He's seizing! Morrison shouted, but Jack saw the truth in Cole's desperate expression. This wasn't a medical emergency. It was a choice. Cole's free hand, the one they'd stopped from pulling the vest trigger, moved with sudden, final purpose toward his sleeve, where something else was hidden. Second device! The words barely left Morrison's mouth before chaos exploded. Officers scrambled backward, training overridden by survival instinct. Martinez pulled Sarah away, both stumbling over abandoned luggage. The remaining cops dove behind check-in counters and support columns, weapons forgotten, humanity replacing procedure. They'd trained for active shooters, hostage scenarios, even bomb threats with time to establish perimeters. But not this. Not a living weapon thrashing on the ground with 2 separate triggers, and nothing but seconds between them and oblivion. Cole's fingers clawed at his sleeve, tearing fabric, revealing a small rectangular device strapped to his forearm. A dead man's switch, cruder than the vest mechanism, but just as deadly. Red indicator light, single button. one purpose. His thumb found the trigger. Jack didn't hesitate. He dropped onto Cole with the full weight of his body, his knee driving into the impostor's chest hard enough to crack ribs. His left hand seized Cole's wrist, wrenching it sideways with brutal force. His right hand locked around Cole's thumb, preventing the final millimeter of pressure that would end everything. "No!" Cole screamed, his voice raw with desperation and pain. They struggled like animals, twisting, grappling, each fighting for control of a button no bigger than a dime. Jack's face was inches from Cole's, close enough to see the burst blood vessels in his eyes, smell the fierce sweat soaking through his uniform. The device on Cole's vest began to emit a high-pitched whine. "It's activating!" Morrison's voice cracked with panic. "Everyone out, now!" The few remaining civilians, security personnel, janitors, gate agents who'd been too slow or too stunned to evacuate, bolted toward emergency exits. Their footsteps thundered against tile. Screams echoed off glass walls. The terminal that had been packed with hundreds now held only those too close to run. The officers pressed themselves against walls, torn between duty and survival, watching two men fight over the power to destroy them all. Sarah's radio crackled. Backup teams holding at safe distance, awaiting orders. Orders. She was supposed to give orders, but every protocol she'd memorized, every scenario she'd drilled, offered no solution for this. "Jack!" she shouted. "Let him go! Get clear!" "If I let go, he triggers it!" Jack snarled through gritted teeth. Cole's face was purple now, oxygen starved from Jack's knee crushing his diaphragm. But desperation gave him strength. His free hand clawed at Jack's face, fingers searching for eyes. Jack headbutted him, a vicious strike that split Cole's eyebrow. Blood sprayed across white tile. The vest device's whine increased in pitch. A tiny LED that had been dark suddenly flickered to life. Green, then yellow. "The vest is going active!" Morrison screamed from behind a concrete pillar. "Pressure drop detected! It thinks he's dying!" Cole laughed, a horrible gurgling sound. "You can't win," he gasped. "Either you kill me and the vest blows, or I press the button, or option 3, Jack growled. "There is no option." Jack's grip shifted. Instead of fighting Cole's thumb away from the trigger, he wrapped his entire hand around Cole's, finger over finger, palm to palm, his strength surrounding the smaller man's hand completely. "You want to die?" Jack whispered, his voice deadly calm. "You want to take me with you? Fine, but you're not taking them." Understanding flashed across Cole's face. "You can't. Watch me." Jack exploded into motion. Still gripping Cole's hand, still preventing the trigger from full depression, he stood, hauling the impostor up with him. Cole's feet left the ground, his body lifting like a rag doll. The device sparked. A visible arc of electricity jumped between contacts. "Jack, no!" Sarah lunged forward, but Jack was already moving. He turned toward the emergency corridor, the service passage that ran behind the gates, used by maintenance crews and airport personnel. Reinforced concrete walls, minimal windows, designed to contain. He dragged Cole backward, moving with purpose despite the struggling weight. The impostor kicked wildly, his free hand beating against Jack's arm, but might as well have been striking stone. "Let me go!" Cole shrieked. "Not a chance," Jack replied. The vest device's LED turned red. The whine became a scream. Martinez started forward. "We have to stay back," Jack roared, his command carrying more authority than any police order. He was 15 feet from the corridor entrance. 10 feet. The device sparked again, more violently. The smell of burning circuitry filled the air. Cole's eyes went wide with realization. "You're insane! You'll kill us both!" "That's the idea," Jack said coldly. 5 feet. The trigger sparked a third time. This one sustained. Electricity arced across Cole's vest in visible lines, like lightning trapped in fabric. Morrison's voice was barely audible over the device's scream. "It's going critical!" 3 feet. Jack reached the corridor entrance, a narrow passage that disappeared into darkness. "Everybody down!" Sarah commanded, her voice cracking. Officers threw themselves flat. Sarah herself dove behind a baggage carousel, covering her head with her arms. The device's scream reached an impossible pitch. Jack looked back once, just once, his eyes meeting Sarah's across the terminal. Then he threw himself and Cole into the corridor. The trigger sparked a final time, and the world turned white. The explosion wasn't the massive fireball everyone feared. It was worse. A concentrated blast erupted from Cole's vest, a directional detonation that sent shrapnel screaming down the emergency corridor in a cone of destruction. The reinforced concrete walls contained most of the force, channeling it away from the main terminal, but the shockwave hit like a physical wall. Every window facing the corridor exploded simultaneously. Glass transformed into thousands of glittering projectiles that swept across Terminal 4 in a deadly wave. The blast wave followed, invisible but devastating, flipping luggage carts, shattering overhead lights, and throwing officers who'd taken cover to the ground. The sound was impossible to describe. Not just noise, but a physical assault that left ears ringing and thoughts scattered. For 3 seconds, the terminal existed in a state of pure chaos. Smoke, glass, screaming alarms, and the acrid smell of explosives mixing with burning plastic. Then the emergency lighting flickered back on, casting everything in hellish red. Sarah pushed herself up from behind the baggage carousel, her hands bleeding from glass cuts she didn't remember receiving. Her ears felt stuffed with cotton. The world moved in slow motion, dreamlike and terrible. "Jack!" she screamed, but couldn't hear her own voice. The corridor entrance was a smoking wound in the terminal's structure. Debris littered the floor. Chunks of concrete, twisted metal, and things she didn't want to identify. Smoke poured out in thick, choking clouds. Martinez appeared beside her, his face white with shock, mouth moving but producing no sound she could hear. Other officers stumbled from cover, weapons drawn by instinct, searching for threats in the haze. Then a figure emerged from the smoke. Jack Alison walked out of the corridor like something from a nightmare. His suit jacket was shredded, hanging in tatters from his shoulders. Blood ran from a dozen cuts across his exposed chest and arms. His face was covered in concrete dust, making him look ghostly, inhuman. But he was walking. 3 steps into the terminal, his right leg buckled. He dropped to one knee with a grunt of pain, his hand shooting out to catch himself against a support column. Blood dripped from his fingers, forming small pools on the white tile. "Stay down!" Morrison shouted, rushing forward. But Jack shook his head, jaw clenched with determination. He used the column to pull himself upright again, refusing to fall. His eyes swept across the terminal, checking, calculating, making sure the threat was contained. Behind him, in the corridor's depths, nothing moved. Cole's body, or what remained of it, lay somewhere in that darkness. The impostor had taken the full force of the blast at point-blank range. He died instantly, probably didn't even feel it. Sarah approached slowly, her weapon lowered, but still in her hand. Part of her, the cop part, wanted to cuff Jack Alison, read him his rights, end this the way procedure demanded. But the rest of her, the human part, could only stare. This man, this criminal, this monster she'd been hunting. He'd just saved every life in this terminal. Why? The word escaped before she could stop it. Jack looked at her, blood trickling from a cut above his eye. For a moment, he seemed about to say something profound, something that would make sense of the impossible thing he'd just done. Instead, he simply said, "Check the corridor. Make sure it's contained." Martinez and two other officers moved cautiously toward the smoking entrance, weapons raised. The rest formed a loose perimeter, uncertain whether Jack was a hero or a threat, or somehow both at once. Through the shattered windows, Sarah could see news vans screeching to a halt outside the terminal perimeter. Satellite trucks deployed dishes. Reporters scrambled from vehicles, cameras already rolling. The lockdown had attracted attention. The explosion had made it breaking news. Within minutes, this moment would be broadcast worldwide. The Mafia boss, the bomb, the sacrifice. Everything would change. Morrison's handheld scanner clicked and whirred as he swept it over Jack's body, checking for additional threats. The device beeped twice, then gave a steady tone. "He's clean," Morrison announced. "No secondary devices." "Terminal secured," Martinez reported, emerging from the corridor. "Target neutralized. No additional threats detected in the immediate—" Morrison's scanner erupted into a frenzy of beeping. Everyone froze. The bomb tech's face went pale as he stared at his equipment. He adjusted settings, checked readings, then looked up with an expression of absolute horror. "That's impossible," he whispered. "What?" Sarah demanded. Morrison's hands trembled as he held up the scanner. "I'm picking up a second signature. Same compound, same frequency." He turned slowly, sweeping the device across the terminal like a divining rod. The beeping intensified. "There's another device," he said, his voice barely audible over the alarms. "Somewhere in this airport." Jack's head snapped up, pain forgotten. "Where?" Morrison adjusted his scanner, triangulating. The beeping grew louder, more urgent. He turned toward the departure gates, his movements jerky with panic. "It's moving," he said. "The signal is moving." Sarah felt ice spread through her chest. "What do you mean, moving?" Morrison's finger traced the signal path on his screen. Gate 12, Gate 15, Gate 18, heading toward the international terminal, he breathed. "It's heading toward departures." Jack pushed off from the column, swaying but upright. Blood still dripped from his wounds, but his eyes were laser-focused. "The serpents didn't plan for one blast. They planned for two." "But how?" Martinez demanded. "We swept everything. Everyone." "Because it's not on a person," Jack said quietly, the pieces falling into place in his mind. "It's inside something mobile. Something that wouldn't raise suspicion." "Like what?" Sarah asked. Jack's expression darkened with understanding. "Like luggage being loaded onto a departing international flight." Morrison's scanner screamed, and somewhere in Terminal 4, a timer continued its countdown. The smoke hadn't even cleared when Jack spoke. "There's another one." Captain Rodriguez froze mid-stride, debris crunching beneath his boots. "What did you say?" Jack pushed himself up from the shattered corridor floor, wincing as glass fragments tumbled from his jacket. Blood streaked across his tattooed chest, but his eyes remained sharp, dangerously sharp. "The serpents don't plan in singles," Jack said, voice cutting through the chaos. "They planted two devices. The first was the distraction. The second—" He paused, scanning the terminal beyond the broken glass. "The second is the real target. Bullshit! Lieutenant Hayes stepped forward, weapon still drawn. You're playing us. Buying time. Am I? Jack turned, locking eyes with the officer. Then explain why they chose a Mafia boss as their scapegoat. Why stage this entire performance in broad daylight with cameras everywhere? He gestured toward the news crews pressed against the security barriers. They wanted maximum coverage, maximum terror. One explosion doesn't accomplish that. Rodriguez exchanged glances with his team. The math was adding up, and they all knew it. Where? Rodriguez demanded. Motion activated, Jack continued, limping forward. Pressure-sensitive trigger woven into the lining. Serpent signature. I've seen their work before in the docks, the financial district. They love irony. His jaw tightened. And they love soft targets. Hayes lowered his weapon slightly. How do we find it? Jack met his gaze. You don't. I do. Like hell. Listen to me. Jack's voice dropped, deadly serious. The serpents use modified cellular components. Commercial scanners won't detect them. But I know their supplier, their builder, their patterns. I know how they think. He stepped closer. Because I used to buy from the same people. Silence fell over the officers. Rodriguez made the call. Everyone spreads out. Alison leads. Hayes, Martinez, flank him. Anyone tries anything, you drop him. Understood? Understood. They moved as one, a strange, tense alliance of law and lawlessness cutting through the evacuated terminal. Jack's eyes swept every surface, every shadow, every corner with the precision of a predator. There. Jack pointed toward a maintenance access panel. Check the vent spacing. 3 inches too narrow for standard installation. An officer checked. He's right. Someone tampered with this recently. Diversion work, Jack muttered, making us think they accessed through maintenance. He kept walking. But the serpents are smarter than that. They'd place it somewhere mobile, somewhere that moves toward the target naturally. They passed gate after gate, Jack's focus absolute. Then a voice crackled through Rodriguez's radio. Captain, we have federal agents demanding entry. They want Alison in custody immediately. Rodriguez's eyes narrowed. Tell them we're in the middle of... Sir, they're citing national security. They want him contained before he can talk. Jack stopped walking. The officers around him tensed. Before I can talk, Jack repeated slowly. He turned to Rodriguez. Captain, how many people knew I was coming to this airport today? Just our team and dispatch. Wrong. Jack's expression darkened. The serpents knew. The feds knew. And now someone's trying very hard to make sure I don't survive long enough to explain how. He stepped closer. This conspiracy doesn't end with street gangs. It goes higher. Much higher. Rodriguez's radio erupted again. Captain, the federal agents are breaching the perimeter. Stall them, Rodriguez ordered. We finish this first. They pressed forward, Jack moving faster now, scanning with renewed urgency. Something visible but invisible, Jack muttered to himself. Something parents trust. Something security ignores. His gaze locked onto the departure gate ahead. Families, children. Travelers boarding a flight to Chicago. And there, near the boarding line, a young mother pushing a stroller. 2 kids. Carry-on luggage. A stroller with a pink canopy and cartoon characters painted on the sides. Jack's blood went cold. Captain. Rodriguez followed his stare. What? The stroller. Hayes frowned. It's just a... Look at the wheels. Jack's voice barely rose above a whisper. The spacing, the weight distribution, that stroller's carrying 30 pounds more than it should. Officers moved closer, eyes widening. Jack was already running. Stop that woman! The mother turned, confused and frightened, as uniformed men sprinted toward her. Jack reached her first, dropping to his knees, sliding across the polished floor. His hand shot beneath the stroller. His fingers brushed cold metal. Wires. A digital timer flickering in the shadows, and a pressure plate attached directly to the underside, designed to trigger the moment the stroller was lifted for boarding. Jack looked up at the officers. Get everyone out. Now. The terminal erupted into screaming chaos, and the flight boarding the gate was scheduled to depart in 90 seconds. Everybody back! Move! Move! Officers flooded the gate, arms spread wide, voices raw with urgency. Passengers stumbled over luggage. Children screamed. Boarding passes scattered across the floor like confetti. The young mother clutched her two kids, eyes wide with terror. What's happening? What did I do? Nothing, ma'am. Jack stayed low, his hand still beneath the stroller, fingers millimeters from the pressure plate. But I need you to step away, right now. Don't touch the stroller. My baby's bag is in there. Leave it. Rodriguez grabbed her shoulder, pulling her and the children back. Go. Run. Don't look back. She fled, kids crying in her arms. Jack remained frozen on his knees, staring at the device blinking beneath the stroller's frame. Red numbers counted down on a small LED screen. Bomb squad's 2 minutes out, Hayes reported, breathing hard. Flight's boarding in 90 seconds, Martinez added. If we don't clear this gate, we're not clearing anything. Jack's voice was ice. This thing's motion activated. The moment we lift it, tilt it, or move it wrong, we're all dead. Rodriguez crouched beside him. Then what do we do? Jack studied the wiring. Serpentine coils wrapped around a central core, exactly like serpent construction. Beautiful, deadly, efficient. The timer's a fail-safe, Jack muttered. But the real trigger's in the base. Any shift in angle or weight distribution sets it off immediately. He exhaled slowly. They designed it so no one could move it. Then we evacuate and contain. There's no time. Jack looked up at Rodriguez. That mother was heading to the tarmac. If this thing gets carried onto a plane, or if the timer runs out near the fuel depot. He didn't finish. He didn't need to. The bomb squad arrived. 3 technicians in heavy gear, scanners already deployed. The lead tech took one look beneath the stroller and went pale. This is Serpent-class military hardware, he breathed. We'd need 15 minutes minimum to disarm, maybe longer. We don't have 15 minutes, Hayes said. Then we don't have options. The tech stepped back. I'm sorry. We can't touch this. Jack's jaw tightened. His mind raced through scenarios, every angle, every possibility, every outcome. They all ended the same way, except one. Clear the terminal, Jack said quietly. Rodriguez frowned. What? I said clear the terminal. Jack rose slowly, carefully, keeping the stroller perfectly level. Get everyone out. All gates. All corridors. Now. Alison, what are you? There's a maintenance tunnel 50 meters east. Leads to the old cargo bay. Reinforced walls. Isolated from the main structure. Jack's eyes locked onto Rodriguez's. I'm taking this thing there. You'll die. Maybe. Jack gripped the stroller's handle. But everyone else won't. Jack, don't. I'm not asking permission, Captain. Jack lifted. For one terrible heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the device beeped, a sharp warning tone. Motion detected. The timer jumped. Go! Rodriguez screamed at his officers. Clear the area! Jack ran. His hands locked around the stroller's frame, keeping it level despite his sprinting stride. Every step was agony. His injured ribs screaming, glass still embedded in his skin, blood soaking through his shirt. Behind him, officers scattered in every direction, radios crackling with evacuation orders. Alison, stop! He didn't stop. The maintenance tunnel entrance loomed ahead, a heavy steel door propped open by a mop bucket. Jack's lungs burned, his vision blurred. He hit the tunnel at full speed, the stroller bouncing slightly in his grip. The device beeped again, angry, insistent. The tunnel stretched endlessly, flickering overhead lights, concrete walls, the distant hum of machinery. Jack pushed harder. His legs threatened to give out. Behind him, footsteps pounded. Hayes and Martinez refusing to let him die alone. Get back! Jack roared without turning. They didn't listen. The cargo bay door appeared at the tunnel's end, rusted, reinforced, exactly where Jack remembered. Jack released the stroller, letting it roll the final meters into the empty bay. He spun, diving back toward the tunnel entrance. Hayes grabbed his arm, pulling him forward. They hit the corridor floor together. Jack looked back, through the tunnel, into the cargo bay, at the stroller sitting alone beneath the flickering lights. The timer hit 0, and the world exploded. The blast tore through the maintenance tunnel like a living thing, a wall of fire and force that consumed everything in its path. Concrete cracked. Steel groaned. The reinforced cargo bay absorbed the brunt of the explosion, containing the fury that would have leveled half the terminal. But the shockwave still came. It threw Jack and the officers backward, slamming them against the corridor walls. Dust and debris filled the air. Alarms shrieked. Emergency lights flickered to life, painting everything in hellish red. For several seconds, there was only ringing silence. Then Hayes coughed, rolling onto his side. Martinez, you alive? Yeah. Martinez groaned, pushing rubble off his legs. I think. They both turned toward the figure sprawled against the wall. Jack. He wasn't moving. Alison! Hayes scrambled forward, medical training kicking in. Blood streaked Jack's face. His shirt was shredded, and a piece of shrapnel jutted from his shoulder. But his chest was rising and falling, barely. We need medical! Now! Martinez screamed into his radio. Within seconds, the corridor flooded with first responders. Paramedics swarmed Jack's body, checking vitals, stabilizing his neck, shouting medical jargon that blurred together. Pulse is weak. BP dropping. Get the stretcher. Move! Captain Rodriguez burst through the smoke, his face a mask of shock and something else. Something that looked almost like respect. He dropped to one knee beside the paramedics. Is he alive? One of them confirmed. But barely. We need to move him now. They loaded Jack onto the stretcher with practiced efficiency. His eyes fluttered open for just a moment, unfocused, distant, before closing again. The journey through the terminal was surreal. Emergency lights, shattered glass, abandoned luggage scattered like forgotten memories, and everywhere, people staring. Passengers pressed against the windows of the secure holding areas, phones raised, recording everything. Officers lined the corridors, watching in stunned silence as the Mafia boss who'd terrorized their city was wheeled past on a stretcher, half dead from saving it. The news crews had multiplied. Dozens of cameras, reporters shouting questions that nobody answered. Outside, the airport had transformed into a command center. Police vehicles, SWAT teams, federal agents, and at the center of it all, Police Chief Sarah Chen, a woman who'd spent 5 years trying to put Jack Alison behind bars. She stood waiting as the paramedics brought Jack into the light. The cameras captured everything. Chief Chen raised her hand, and the paramedics paused. Just for a moment, she knelt beside the stretcher, her face unreadable. Jack's eyes opened, barely. His voice came out as a rasp. "Chief Chen, come to finish the job?" "Why?" Her question cut through the chaos. "Why did you save them? Save us? You could have run. Could have let this city burn." She leaned closer. "Why risk everything?" Jack's bloodied lips curved into something that might have been a smile. The cameras zoomed in. The world held its breath. "Because even devils protect their own city." Silence crashed over the airport like a wave. Chief Chen stared at him. This man she'd hunted, this criminal she'd sworn to destroy. And something shifted in her eyes. She stood slowly and nodded to the paramedics. "Get him to the hospital. Full security detail. Nobody touches him without going through me first." "Chief, that's an order." As they loaded Jack into the ambulance, Rodriguez approached Chen. "Ma'am, the federal agents are demanding custody. Tell them to get in line." Chen's voice was steel. "That man just saved 200 lives. Whatever he is, whatever he's done, he earned the right to survive this day." Rodriguez nodded. "Yes, ma'am." But he hesitated. "Captain?" "The conspiracy," Rodriguez said quietly. "It's bigger than we thought. The Serpents had inside help, federal level. We've already identified 3 agents who were feeding them information." He glanced toward Jack's departing ambulance. "Alison was right. About all of it." Chen's jaw tightened. "Then we do this by the book. Every lead, every connection, and we make sure nobody buries this." "And Alison?" Chen watched the ambulance disappear through the airport gates, sirens wailing. "He's still a criminal, still going to face charges, but..." She paused. "He's also a hero. Both things can be true." 3 hours later, the hospital room was heavily guarded. 8 officers outside, 2 inside. Jack lay in the bed, bandaged, stitched, and pumped full of painkillers that barely touched the edges of his consciousness. Hayes and Martinez stood near the door, still in their torn uniforms. "We should hate him," Martinez said quietly. "Yeah." Hayes didn't disagree. "We should." "But we don't." Hayes looked at the man in the bed, the devil who'd saved them all, and shook his head. "No, we don't." Jack's eyes opened. His voice was stronger now, though still rough. "You two didn't have to follow me into that tunnel." "Yeah, we did," Hayes said. "Stupid." "Probably." Martinez almost smiled. "But you ran toward a bomb to save people you didn't know. People who wanted you locked up. So who's really the stupid one?" Jack's laugh turned into a cough. "Fair point." The door opened. Chief Chen entered, her expression professional but no longer hostile. "Mr. Alison?" "Chief?" "You're under arrest. Multiple charges. Racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy, weapons trafficking." She paused. "But you already knew that." "Yeah." Jack's eyes didn't leave hers. "I did." The federal investigation into the serpents has expanded. Your testimony will be valuable. Chen stepped closer. Cooperate fully, and we can discuss reduced charges, maybe even protection. Jack considered this. And if I don't cooperate? Then you go to prison for the rest of your life. Chen's voice was matter-of-fact. But either way, you go down as the man who saved this city. That means something. To a lot of people. Not to everyone. No. Chen almost smiled. Not to everyone, but to enough. She turned to leave, then stopped. Jack? It was the first time she'd used his first name. Thank you. He nodded once. She left. 48 hours later. The video went viral within hours. Security footage from the terminal, news coverage, cell phone recordings from passengers. All of it spliced together into a narrative that the world couldn't look away from. 14 cops surround Mafia boss at airport. What happened next shocked everyone. The headlines wrote themselves. 50 million views in the first day. 100 million by the end of the week. People argued, debated. Some called Jack a hero. Others called him a criminal who got lucky. Most agreed he was both. The Serpents network collapsed under federal investigation. 17 arrests, dozens of indictments, and the exposure of corruption that reached into government offices nobody wanted to acknowledge. Jack Alison became the most controversial figure in the country. But he also became something else, a symbol of choices, of redemption, of the thin line between darkness and light. 1 week later, Jack was transferred from the hospital under heavy security. Cuffs on his wrists, chains on his ankles. But he walked on his own power, head high, tattoos visible beneath his prison-issued shirt. The media circus was waiting, but so were the officers, all 14 of them. Rodriguez, Hayes, Martinez, the bomb squad techs, the terminal security who'd evacuated civilians, even Chief Chen. They lined the pathway from the hospital doors to the transport vehicle. 2 perfect rows, just like that first moment in the terminal. But this time, something was different. Jack walked between them, and as he passed, one by one, the officers stepped aside. Not in fear, not in anger, but in respect. Rodriguez nodded. Hayes saluted. Martinez met Jack's eyes and nodded once. Jack kept walking, but something in his expression shifted. A crack in the armor, a glimpse of the man beneath the devil. The cameras captured it all. The Mafia boss, the cops who hunted him, and the moment they acknowledged what nobody wanted to say out loud. Sometimes monsters save us. Sometimes devils protect their cities. And sometimes the line between good and evil is nothing more than a choice. Jack climbed into the transport vehicle. The doors closed, and as the vehicle pulled away, one question remained. Was Jack Alison a villain who became a hero? Or a hero who'd always been hiding behind a villain's mask? The world would debate that question for years. But the 14 cops who surrounded him at the airport? They already knew the answer.